Today on the Bandrew Says podcast, we're going to talk about third-party apps reading your Gmail. We're going to talk about Samsung potentially sending your nudes to random people. We're going to talk about the Aussie government biometrically tracking air travelers and a whole lot more, so go ahead and stick around. All right. Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome back to episode 126 of the BSP. My name is Bandrew. This is what I says. Down below, there are timestamps of everything that I talk about, so you can skip around and save a couple of minutes. But if you got the time, I'd suggest listening to the entire episode. Couple of personal things up top. First off, I just wanted to say thank you, because the response to the podcast being uploaded to the Podcastage YouTube channel, simply put, shocked me. I was expecting 50% of people to trash me for uploading it there, but the majority of people seem to be supportive of it and find it kind of interesting. And I just wanted to say thank you, and I appreciate you allowing me to upload new and experimental types of content onto the Podcastage channel, because it's a very rare thing to find on YouTube. Typically, when a channel tries to expand outside of its main focus, people will trash them, people will unsubscribe, people will stop watching. But it seems like my audience is kind enough and nice enough to allow me to try a couple of different things to keep it fresh for myself and keep it fresh for you. And a lot of them probably realize, hey, that doesn't seem interesting to me, I'm just not going to watch it. And that's the right way to look at it. And I just wanted to say I appreciate all of you for supporting me on this endeavor to upload the podcast to my main channel. Thank you, guys. Secondly, I am back on the SM7B after 4 weeks of using the RE27ND, and I gotta say, it feels great to be back being a biased SM7B shill, as the comments on this channel will sometimes imply. And you know what? I don't care if people think that all you like. I love this microphone, and I am just very happy to be back on it and try my new processing techniques on this microphone to see how it works with this little fella. And lastly, it was just a slow news week, so sorry. There's nothing I can really do about that, so you're just stuck with a slow news week. There's nothing I can do to make the news more interesting or seem more interested in stuff that seems boring to me. So let's get right into it. And the first thing is Google Duplex is going to be implemented, possibly be implemented into some call centers. So according to Engadget, an insurance company has shown interest in Google Duplex. Now, if you don't know what Google Duplex is, this is that AI human voice thing that they demonstrated at Google I/O, where they used it to call a Chinese restaurant to make a reservation, and they also called a hair salon to make an appointment. Now, I'll admit, while I was reading the headlines for this story, I got so excited. I was just sitting there saying, yes, finally, we are fighting back. We're no longer going to have to deal with these companies' nonsense, because my thought was, okay, they're going to allow consumers, ourselves, to use Google Duplex to call insurance companies, to call our cable companies, and have that AI deal with those awful automated systems. But that doesn't seem to be the case. It just seems like a lot of companies are realizing the value that's in this, where they could replace their really crappy, for lack of a better term, automated voice systems and replace it with the Google Duplex, which is much more intelligent and much more natural sounding. So people may not be as angry to deal with Google Duplex as opposed to the current press 9 if you would like to hear the instructions in Espanol. I did not understand that. Please repeat. No longer having to deal with that would be a dream come true. But what I would really like is to allow the customers to use Google Duplex to call and cancel our cable subscription, call and downgrade our internet service, call our insurance agencies, file a claim, or just call any of these places that have automated systems, work through the automated system to get to a real person, and then pass it off to the end consumer, which would be me in this case, and that would maybe make me consider picking up a Google phone if it allowed you to do that, because one thing I hate more than anything is those freaking automated call services. I hate them so much. Please press 9 or say 9 if you would like to. Yeah, shut up. I don't care. That's the end of that story. We'll just have to wait and see, like I always say. Now we're jumping to security news. Now, normally this is the last thing I talk about, and it will be the last news stuff that I talk about, but like I said, slow news week. So Google has been giving third-party app developers access to your Gmail. So last year, Google came out and said, hey, guess what? We're no longer going to be scraping your emails for keywords. We're no longer going to be searching them or anything. And guess what? Google was technically telling the truth, but it just came out that third-party app developers, and I'm guessing also websites that use Google Login, have been able to search through your email for keywords and do all of that stuff. So none of the articles were really clear about all the ways to gain access to your email or your Google services, but my thoughts are when you download a free app or sometimes when you visit a site that require accounts, they will typically give you a couple of options. That would be sign in with Google, sign in with Facebook, sign in with Twitter, and then hidden down below in very light text where it's very difficult to see, it says sign up with your email address, where you can type in your email, create your own password, and you're not giving them access to anything. That is always hidden. Now, I imagine if you were to go ahead and sign up with Google, Facebook, or Twitter, if you read the privacy policy on these sites or apps, it would state that by signing up, these services you are allowing these services to access and scan your emails for data, and that they will have the right to aggregate it and sell it off and do whatever they please with it. Now, Google also released a blog talking about this, and they pointed out that email clients, trip planners, and customer relationship management system applications that is a mouthful, also will have the ability to integrate with your email. So in the show notes and description down below, I'll go ahead and link two things. One being the Google blog that I just addressed, and secondly will be the Google security check, which will show you what third-party apps and websites you've allowed access to your Google services, whether it be Gmail, whether it be your contacts, whether it be your calendar, whether it be your YouTube account. It will show all apps that have access to your Google services. So I went ahead and checked two of my accounts to see how this could potentially look. If you have no apps that you've allowed access to, you won't even have an expandable menu item for apps access, or what the title is third-party access. It just won't show up. So that means you are in the clear. You are in a good spot. No third parties have access to any of your information that's hosted on Google. That is a good place to be in. If you have allowed third parties to access your information, it will have a header that says third-party access. Surprise, surprise. If you click on that, it's going to show you an entire list of all the apps, all the services, and everybody who you've allowed access to your accounts. It will tell you what Google services that you've allowed access to and what they are able to do with that access. And the best part about this is directly next to the app, directly next to the site, it has a very easy way to revoke access. It's just a simple one-click button. Revoke access to this. If you don't want TubeBuddy to access your YouTube account, sign into this Google security place, hit revoke access. Done. Super easy, super straightforward, and very happy to see that they did make it so easy to take access away from all these people that now you likely won't want them to have. So what do I think here? Do I think this is bad news? Obviously. I don't think anybody should have access to such personal and private and sensitive information as all of your emails, your calendars, any of that stuff. That should all be very private, and you should not allow anybody to access that. If you do, that's a very dumb move, and you need to revoke it immediately. But do I think Google is at fault here? Do I think Google is doing anything wrong? Absolutely not. And I know that's a very unpopular opinion, but I think they are very transparent about what they are doing. Just read the freaking privacy policy. Now, if you don't know that giving an application or a service or a website access to such sensitive information as your email, your calendar, your contact book, and all of that is a bad thing, I don't know what to tell you. I'm just going to end this story by putting out a disclaimer. Please, for the love of the few things good and holy in this world, when you sign up for a new service, please read the privacy policy. Please read the privacy policy. There are two sections that you should really be focusing on. The first one, what data we collect. That will tell you what information they are going to be gathering about you, whether it be location data, IP data, whether they're going to be searching through your emails to gain keywords. The second portion you should look at is how we use data that we collected. This will tell you if they are just gathering that information to provide the service that you are signing up for, or if they are going to say we reserve the right to do whatever we want with it. We can sell it off to our partners. We can give it to the government. It will tell you exactly what they are able to do with the information that they collected with you from the previous segment I told you to read. So I will end it with that disclaimer. Please read privacy policies, especially if you're going to be implementing it and pushing it on your audience. I read through a privacy policy for this service that a lot of YouTubers are using, and they sold out their audience. I am so pissed off at them, and I hate their guts. I don't really hate them, but I just think they didn't read their privacy policy, or they knowingly sold out their audience, and for shame, all of you scumbags. Okay. Got on my high horse there for a second. Let's go ahead and jump to the next story. The Samsung texting app is sending your nudes possibly. Now, that's a little bit of a clickbaity title, but I just had to catch your attention and let you know how serious this could be. So users have been commenting on Reddit and the Samsung consumer forums, I guess they are, that random photos in their galleries have been being sent to random people in their contact book. Now, there's one instance where a guy's entire photo gallery was sent to his girlfriend overnight, and I hope this guy was careful about what he took photos of, and if he was a cheating scumbag, if he had photos of his mistresses. Hopefully he didn't. Or hopefully he did. You know what? If he's a cheater, screw him. I hope he got sold out by Samsung here. But people have stated that this is likely due to the recent RCS messaging update that was pushed out by T-Mobile. Quick side note, what is RCS messaging? It's replacing the SMS standard, and it's adding iMessage-like features to text across carriers, but unfortunately, it does not include end-to-end encryption like iMessage does. But instead of just that green bubble that just has only text, you're going to have multimedia functions. It's going to be much more useful. But T-Mobile pushed back and said, hey, yo, this was not us. Leave us alone. Leave us out of this. This is all Samsung's fault. And that makes perfect sense. This is not a controversy you want to be tied up in, because this is a serious breach of consumer privacy and consumer concern. I don't think concern's a strong enough word, but T-Mobile pushed back and said, no, it wasn't us. So what can be done to mediate this in the meantime until Samsung comes out with a patch to resolve this very serious breach? The only thing that I'm aware of is go into your settings on your Samsung phone and revoke the access to your storage for the Samsung text messaging app. Maybe if you're able to, delete the Samsung messaging app and download a different messaging service. I believe what people are recommending is Google Android messaging, something like that. I don't know. I don't have an Android phone and I don't know what's available, but I really don't need to say what's so bad about this. It's pretty apparent. Imagine any kind of awkward conversation you're going to have if you're somebody who takes naked photos to send to your significant other, and that gets sent to your parents, your brother, your sister, maybe a coworker. You're going to be seeing HR, and your mom's going to be saying, hey, Billy, why did you send me a picture of your junk? It's going to be a very serious and very awkward conversation that you're meant to have or forced to have because Samsung screwed up so badly. That's where we're going to end that one. I got nothing more to say. I am so happy that I don't use a Samsung, and I know people will be in the comments, oh, but Apple did this with this in the iCloud, and you know what? Let me just have my day, okay? Get off my back. Let me live in my conspiracy corner, you jerks. Stop trying to rain on my parade. Now, this one is scary. Australian airports are going to be replacing passports with biometric scanning. Sounds futuristic, right? Sounds super convenient. You no longer have to carry around your passport. You no longer have to carry around your boarding pass. And, oh, you got so much stuff in your hands. Don't worry. We'll just scan your face and your fingerprints and track you everywhere you go. Got a little bit over the top there, sorry. I just hate this kind of stuff. So an airline called Qantas, or Qantas, Qantas, they travel through the Sydney airport, and they're going to be adopting facial recognition for check-ins, bag drops, lounge access, and plane boarding. Not only is this company behind it, but the Aussie government endorsed this and promised 22.5 million Australian dollars to ensure that facial recognition is adopted across Australian airports. Now, I know that sounds like a lot of money and it sounds very serious, but to be fair, 22.5 million Australian dollars, what is that in USD? like $25. I don't know. It's not much money at all. But seriously, it is a serious thing that the government is backing this, and that has me seriously concerned. And obviously, there are going to be security concerns when you are recording biometric or facial recognition information in large groups and in large databases. So in the Australian Financial Review, Dr. Bruce Bayer-Arnold warned that the trials are going to be tracked by government departments who could apply the same technology in public spaces. So, therein lies the issue. This seems like a convenience thing. Oh, you no longer have to carry around your boarding pass or pull out your phone and show them the QR code. So no, this is a proof of concept to see if they're able to get this right and gather enough information to make it valuable enough to roll it out across the entire country and track people in public spaces. Now, I am getting a little conspiratorial here, but I don't think we need to go into the corner because this is already rolled out in China, if I'm not mistaken, and there are already discussions in the US to roll this technology out at the US borders. So this obviously, like I said, there's a lot of concerns here, and it's concerning for a few reasons. The first question I would ask anybody in power or anybody supporting this is, what kind of regulations are going to be in place to make sure there's checks and balances here? Because my understanding is previously, in order to get your biometric information like fingerprints, you would have to be arrested and be processed in jail for the government to have that information and put it in a database that would be able to be queryable. Is that a word? I don't think it is. I think I just made up a word, queryable. But now, if you're just somebody who wants to go on a vacation, if you just want to go on a plane trip, now they are having the ability to facially recognize you, gather all your biometric information, put it in a database, and then query it to their heart's desire without any checks and balances in place that I'm aware of. So that's the first question I would have. Now, additionally, anytime the information is stored in a database, there's a point of attack. That's another really big concern because people can hack this database and gain access to a large number of citizens' biometric identification information. So the second question there would be, what kind of security are you putting in place, and how can we be so sure that you're not going to store it on an Amazon Web Services server that is just open to the public? Because that seems so frequent today. We hear about that all the time. Oh my God, they stored a bunch of unhashed passwords on AWS that was unencrypted and open for anybody to see. So those are the two questions I would have. What kind of checks and balances and regulations will be in place, and what kind of security and what kind of intrusion detection? That's not even the main thing that you need to focus on, but what kind of security will you be putting into place to secure this information? If you're in Australia, highly recommend you contact your representative and ask them those questions and maybe push back on the fact that they are rolling out or possibly rolling out countrywide biometric scanning in public places. That's concerning. And that is it for the news. Now let's jump to a products I want, or I guess this would be products I wanted. And this is an update to the BlackBerry Key 2. So I pointed out a week or two how badly I wanted the Key 2, but turns out that's not going to happen. And why is that, Bandrew? Well, it's because BlackBerry is shooting themselves in the foot by not releasing a CDMA antenna version of the Key 2, which would open it up to Verizon, which I believe is the largest cell provider in the US. So I'm disappointed. Can't use it, can't have it. I'm not switching services or servers. What's the providers to get the Key 2? No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do it. So maybe I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and assume that, hey, the iPhone came out on AT&T originally, and that's the only place you can get it. Maybe with further iterations of the Key 2 series or the Key series, they'll roll it out with CDMA as well as GSM. I think that's the other antenna. So fingers crossed there. Now let's jump to what I've been testing, and this is going to sound like I am a shill. I guess you could say this is going to be a shilly segment. It's like I'm saying silly, but with a lisp. Oh boy, this is going to be a rough one. This is going to be shilly. Okay, so I'm going to talk about Audible here, and I've been testing this for about 2 years now, and I've just been loving Audible so much recently. And full disclosure, this is not an advertisement. I was not paid to do this, but I am going to include an affiliate link down below because they currently have a promotion to get 66% off of a 3-month subscription. So if you are into that, click the affiliate link, gives me a kickback, and you will get some awesome books. I'm going to share some awesome books that I think you should check out. So The reason I love this is now I'm listening to audiobooks in my drive to and from work as opposed to just podcasts before, which was fine, but now I'm actually getting more well-vetted information, and it just makes me feel like I'm getting smarter rather than just listening to dick and fart jokes, which is what I typically do when I'm listening to podcasts. So it's nice to have some useful information making it into my ear holes as opposed to just those dirty jokes. Now, I'm going to give you 4 books that I've listened to over the last 6 months, and maybe one of these will catch your fancy and you may want to check it out. Now, the first 2 are going to tie into one of the Ask Bandrew questions or emails. First one, Area 51, An Uncensored History by Annie Jacobson. Skunkworks, A Personal Memoir by Ben Rich. Trust No One, X-Files Volume 1. The Truth Is Out There, X-Files Volume 2. So I love the first 2 books because I am a big fan of conspiracies. I'm a big fan of Area 51. I'm a big fan of aliens. I'm a big fan of all that stuff. If it wasn't apparent by the Truth Is Out There poster or the fact that I got X-Files books on here and I love the X-Files so much. I got the VHS sitting on the shelf back there. So I love that stuff. And the reason I like these 2 books so much is it takes something that's been so secretive and provides government documentation that explains everything that's gone on. It removes that conspiratorial veil and replaces it with real explanations. But if you are somebody who's really into conspiracies, you can just go ahead and keep that conspiracy hat on and say, you know what? This isn't real information. This is nothing more than a disinformation campaign. They're trying to trick us and hide the aliens even more. So don't worry, it won't ruin your whole worldview, your conspiracy view. You can still go down that road. I just gave you an easy way out. It's a disinformation campaign. Anything you don't like, it's a disinformation campaign. They don't want you to know. I don't know why I'm getting so heated. The second 2 books, the X-Files books. Like I said, no secret, I love the X-Files. I love them so much. And it's no secret that Season 10, Season 11, kind of short. Also, a lot of stinkers in there. A lot of not-so-good episodes in there. Each of these chapters, there's, I think, 15 or 16 in each book, and they take about an hour to get read through. So you're essentially getting 30 new X-Files episodes that you can listen to and experience while you're driving in your car, while you're sitting at your dumb day job at your desk, just hating your life. It's amazing. You get to live in the X-Files all the time. I love those 2 books, and they were awesome. And then the Area 51 and Skunkworks books. If you don't know what Skunkworks is, that was, I believe, Lockheed Martin's very highly classified experimental aircraft development agency in California. And they frequently flew out to Area 51 to test stuff. So really into all 4 of those books. And like I said, I'll throw an affiliate link in the description and show notes in case you want to sign up for Audible. Again, non-sponsorship, but it is an affiliate link, so I get a kickback. And I believe right now the promotion is 66% off if you pay for 3 months in advance. Pretty good deal in my opinion. Okay, now let's jump to what you had to say since I'm done being a shilly boy. I hate myself so much. Okay, first comment comes from Soundspeeds. I'll disagree with Sure on that. I've seen condensers wrecked by SPL. And this is in regards to me answering a question about can loud noises destroy condenser microphones. So Alan says, I'll disagree with Sure on that. I've seen condensers wrecked by SPL. On season 1 of The Walking Dead, I came to fill in for her boom op when he was bitten by a copperhead. Of the 3 Shep's CMIT 5U she owns, 2 were blown out by full-load gunfire. I've spoken with Gary, who does repairs at True Audio, and he's repaired damaged condenser capsules in everything from Sennheiser mics to Senkins. Speaking of Senkins, I've seen Senkin labs damaged from gunfire on set. That's tough to do, and to be clear, they still produced sound, but sounded like kind of like blown-out speaker cones. Typically, a damaged condenser still works, it just distorts at low volumes. So, Alan, thank you very much for providing information that was correcting me on last week's episode and correcting Sure from last week's episode and providing experiences from your real-world work. I appreciate you doing that, and to be honest, the loudest thing I've recorded is probably a drum set. I don't deal with gunfire, and I was using SM57s, which you're not going to blow the capsule out of by recording drums. That's why you can close mic drums with those things and have no issue. You can hit them with the drumstick and no problem. So thank you very much. And if anybody watching or listening is into film sound or boom operation, head over to youtube.com/soundspeeds. That is Alan's channel. Lots of useful information there. Second comment comes from Eileen Smith. She says, when I first heard the story about the new law in California on Twit, I assumed Amazon, AT&T, and the others were opposed to the law because they want to buy our information, not sell it. It seems to me that they can make more money from consumers by getting more information on us than they can by selling our data. So it was interesting to hear your perspective. Do you think there is a chance that they are doing both, buying and selling? So Eileen, thank you very much for that comment. And I believe you are 100% right that places like Amazon likely buying and selling that information. So I imagine that Amazon would want to buy and sell because it will allow them to make more successful marketing campaigns to get us to buy more stuff. For places like AT&T, I don't think they'd get much benefit from buying information in the same way that Amazon would because they're not necessarily marketing directly to the people on their network. I don't think. Maybe they are, but I bet they do have a super cookie, which I believe is at the network level, and they track everything that's done on your phone on their network. So they know, okay, they spend this much time on the phone, they access these apps, they go to these websites. Now, there is a cell provider that I do believe would buy and sell, and that would be Verizon. And that's because they recently purchased AOL, I believe, about a year ago or 2 years ago. And AOL apparently has a really good ad platform and a really good ad algorithm. So I bet they would likely be using a super cookie to collect everything you're doing on your phone, and then also buying third-party data to aggregate and collate or collect with that information that they already have, to create really, really complicated or complete profiles on their users. And that would allow them to possibly charge a much higher premium, saying, oh, we know exactly what this person is into, what sites they go to, how much time they spend on their phone, where they visit, and get some really good eyes in front of some advertisements. So I think places like Verizon, absolutely buying and selling. Amazon, absolutely buying and selling. But places like AT&T, I don't think they have an ad network in place, so I'm not 100% sure there. So Eileen, thank you very much for that comment, and thank you for pointing out my error. And the third comment comes from Aaron, and he says, if you're not paying for a service, you are the product. When it comes to Google or other companies you don't pay for, information has to be sold for the company to stay in business. The question should be, do you want to pay for it, or are you willing to sacrifice privacy for it? After all, it's their service, and it's your choice to use it. Personally, I'm not worried about my information because I have nothing to hide, but it does worry me sometimes that this is the system we currently have, and not many people seem to know about it. As for services you do pay for, I don't think they should turn the consumer into a product ever. Aaron, I 100% agree with you, and I believe I've screamed almost that exact same phrase on this podcast at least a dozen times. That phrase being, if you're not paying for a product, you are the product. And I think it would be nice to have options to pay for any service, and that would eliminate the possibility of them tracking you and advertising to you. But that would actually lead to some issues in that privacy would then become a luxury item only for the wealthy, because lower class isn't going to have $5 for every service they use. So now the lower class becomes a commodity for these advertising companies. So that raises a couple questions that I personally don't have the answers to. And if anybody wants to share their thoughts, leave them in the comments on YouTube, because I would love to know what you think here. The questions would be, would this somehow lead to an increased gap between the rich and the poor? And how would the collection and aggregation of the lower class's data and information affect their position in society? So that's what my thoughts are in terms of paying for privacy. I want it, but I understand there would be some big societal implications, and I don't have the answers to those questions. But moving on, I do agree with you. If we give a company money, that really should be the end of the transaction, except for maybe warranties and return policies. There still should be some relationship there because we're giving you money, and we should be able to trust that that product or that service will last us and meet our expectations that you provided us. But they should not use that data gathered from the sale to sell us more data or market to us further. And that's personally why I don't use one of those savey save cards. To quote a very angry, very famous, very smart man by the name of Bill Burr, he said, whenever somebody asks me if I want a savey save card, he responds with, I know you don't want to earn less money. So what are you up to? And I think that's the perfect observation about that. These companies don't want to earn less money. So whenever you sign up for one of those savey save cards, think about what information you are giving them every time you use it for them to justify giving you that dollar discount on diapers, that dollar discount on Rice Krispies. Ask yourself that. So that is it for the What You Had to Say. Now let's jump to my favorite part of the podcast, the Ask Bandrew segment. Okay guys, so just a reminder, if you got any questions, go ahead and send them to askbandrew@gmail.com, and I will likely answer them on an upcoming episode of the podcast. First email comes from Alan, aka Soundspeeds. That's right, same guy who was in the What You Had to Say segment. He says, after talking with someone on your Discord server about XLR cables, I thought I'd ask you a few questions about the cables you use. Do you have preferred XLR cables you connect to your system most of the time? Canary? Mogami? Is there a connector you prefer? Neutrik or Switchcraft? I'm sure you have just about a million XLR to XLR cables and XLR to 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch cables included with microphones that you bought, but are any microphone manufacturers actually supplying good cables? Thanks, dude. Alan, thank you very much for contributing twice on this episode of the podcast. Appreciate you. Reminder, anybody into audio, anybody into film sound, anybody into boom operation, Soundspeeds on YouTube, check that out. So, to the question, preferred microphone cable for my setup, I run Mogami cables because that's just brand recognition for me. I've been using Mogami and I've been hearing about Mogami for 20 years. Since I first started playing guitar, and I'd go to a guitar center and they'd say, oh, you want a good cable, get Mogami, but they were $50. I was young, I couldn't afford it, so I just went with the cheapest stuff I could. I think it was Livewire or something like that, but now I use Mogami cables. As far as the connectors, these are Neutrik. I don't build my own cables. I've never used anything with, I think it was Switchcraft. I've never used any Canary cables, so I don't know how those perform or compare to a Mogami, but I have had absolutely zero issues with these cables. They are $50 for a 6-footer or a 10-footer, so that is a big problem that I actually have had. The cost, they are expensive, but you do pay for the quality, and I believe they come with a lifetime warranty as well. Now, as far as many of the cables being provided with microphones being high quality, no. Not at all. Not by any stretch of the imagination. Most of them are complete garbage. So let me elaborate here. The majority of cables that I have gotten do feel like garbage. I have received a few decent feeling ones. One was with a Rode microphone kit, and another one was with the Focusrite kit. They were unbranded connectors. They were unbranded cabling, so I don't know exactly what they were. But the majority of kits that come with XLR cables or whatever kind of cables cost $20 to $30. And for $20 to $30, if you're getting a microphone, a shock mount, a microphone stand, a cable, a pop filter, a windscreen, all of this stuff, there's no way that they're going to be able to pay or manufacture a cable for more than $1.50 or $2. It's going to be a relatively cheap cable that's going to be pretty bad quality. Now, let me go ahead and explain my knowledge of cables and why you would want higher quality cables. And Alan, maybe you can correct me in the comments, or maybe you'll agree with me and say you got it right on. So the reason you would go with a really expensive high quality cable like Mogami, or I'm guessing Canary, is first, if you are putting a lot of wear and tear on these things, like if you're out in the field doing audio for a film, wrapping, unwrapping, wrapping, unwrapping, the cabling is much higher quality, so it's going to have less wear, you're going to have less failed cables in the field, which is probably going to be very important, especially if you're doing film audio and they are shooting to actual film. You don't want to lose a take when it's going to film. Secondly, shielding. Now, if you're running short distances in a well-known environment and you know what kind of RF interference you have, you could probably get away with a cheaper cable if it is a relatively low amount of interference. So the reason that you would want one with a more expensive cable is they do better shielding. So for particularly long runs, like 100 feet, or if you are going to environments that you're completely unaware of, you want to make sure that that cable is as shielded as possible, because you don't want to gather radio signals while you're recording your podcast, or while you're recording dialogue for a film, or while you're recording a band live at a studio or live at a venue. That's the last thing you would want. So that's another big benefit of the high quality cables. The durability and the shielding and the connectors are a lot higher quality as well, and they typically come with lifetime warranties. So, Alan, Thank you for the question. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments down below. I look forward to that. And thank you again. Next email comes from Anthony. So today, I have been hardcore nerding out on science/space podcasts. All day it has been Hysteria 51, Stuff to Blow Your Mind, Star Talk, etc. Get that conspiracy hat on. Now to the question. President Trump has announced the intent to start the Space Force as the 6th division of the military. Do you think that disclosure is on the way? Will we find out that we are not alone? What do you expect the public reaction will be if that disclosure is released? Mass panic, vindication for people who have always believed in life outside the planet, etc.? Or is it possible this is all a plan to jumpstart the space race, bring NASA into the military division to cause a guaranteed budget? Anthony, yes, yes, yes. Thank you for this question. This is right up my alley. I love this stuff, and I love you for asking it, Anthony. But quick side note to anybody watching or listening, if you're into archery, Anthony is the co-host with his wife of the Off-Center Archers podcast. So if you're into archery, go check out that podcast on any podcatcher. So to the questions. Do I think disclosure is on the way? Before I get into it, I will admit a lot of people are going to hate me for this. A lot of the people who are believers, a lot of people who are conspiracy believers, and a lot of people who are a part of the disclosure movement are going to hate me for this, and I welcome that. I apologize. This is my personal belief. I'm not saying I'm right. You may be fully right in your beliefs, but let's get into it. So do I think disclosure is on the way? I'm a Mulderish, Scully kind of person. I want to believe, but I can't believe without the evidence. And that may be a big problem when you're dealing with these very out there beliefs of extraterrestrials traveling long distances and visiting us and abducting us and experimenting on us. I believe you need to be just a strictly Mulder type person to believe in that stuff. So one of the biggest events for believers is going to be Roswell. So let's talk about that very quickly. And I'll admit, or I will say, I am sorry to be a buzzkill here. After reading a couple of books about early experimental aircraft and the Cold War, I don't think Roswell was extraterrestrials. And I'm going to share an anecdote. I believe it was actually from the Area 51 Annie Jacobson book I referenced in the What I've Been Testing, or What I've Been Reading, I guess. And it was that when the U.S. government or the military was testing out the first jet plane, people would see that and freak out. Other propeller pilots would freak out and say, oh my God, how is that thing flying? There's no propellers. How is it working? What is happening? And they would want to talk about it. They would tell people about it. I saw this thing flying around without any propellers. It's like magic. So what would they do to discredit those people who saw it? The pilots of the first jet airplanes would wear gorilla masks. So I know it sounds ridiculous, and it is. But now, if any of these propeller pilots saw a jet plane that was being tested, they saw the pilot, and they would say, oh, I saw this plane. It didn't have propellers, and a gorilla was flying it. If they go to the airport or a bar and tell anybody about that, everybody's going to harass them and make fun of them, and not a single person will believe that, because how is a gorilla going to fly a plane that doesn't even have propellers? That's preposterous. So that's the kind of discrediting the government would go to keep their secrets. And I just thought that's a fun anecdote that would kind of lend credence to this idea that it wasn't aliens. It could have been anything. It could have just been, a U.S. experimental aircraft where they dress up like ETs to confuse people. But what I think it was probably an experimental Russian craft. And I say that because up on the screen on YouTube, I will include the Cyrillic alphabet. Now, in Roswell, New Mexico in 1940, it wouldn't be too far-fetched to think that people weren't aware of the Cyrillic alphabet, and you could understand why somebody in the 1940s in New Mexico, in Roswell, may think, you know what, this looks like some kind of alien language. It looks like hieroglyphics. It is very similar to hieroglyphics with some of the shapes, and it doesn't make any sense. It's not the Roman, it's not the English alphabet. I don't know what this is. It must be alien. So you can understand that. But the reason I think could have been given for allowing this thought that it was aliens to perpetuate is, imagine the panic that would arise in the general population if it was discovered that a Russian aircraft was able to penetrate U.S. air defenses and get all the way to New Mexico. That would be a huge hit on the public trust and the public belief in U.S. air defense, especially right after the World War. People would lose their damn minds. And that's the last thing you want around that time, right after a World War. You need people to start spending in the economy. The last thing you want is for people to think, oh my God, I'm going to get bombed by Russia. Nobody wants to think that. So the government may have planned this entire operation to allow people or force people or put out this disinformation that, yes, it was aliens. It was aliens. It definitely wasn't the Russians. No, not the Russians. That's my take on it. And I know, huge buzzkill. I get it. I want to believe it's aliens too, but probably a Russian experimental craft. So do I think disclosure of alien existence is on the way? I don't think so, unfortunately. If any kind of disclosure is coming, it's likely going to be that another nation has already started to militarize space. I think that's probably what kind of disclosure we would have. But again, that may be we don't want to admit that because that will put a lot of U.S. citizens' minds in a dark place. And we don't want that because we want them to spend and keep the economy going. So what would the public reaction be if there was an actual disclosure of extraterrestrial life? That's an interesting question. So first, let's talk about religion. Think about how many religious people there are out there and what kind of implication it would have on their entire belief system to find out, oh no, we're not alone. We're not alone. What's the Christian thing? God made man in his own image. Who made the little gray thing? Who made the little gray thing? And why is he smarter than us? And why does he have technology that we don't have? Why is he doing stuff that Jesus did? Imagine the impact on their entire belief system. It would crush them. It would destroy them. And what does somebody with no hope in a crushed belief system do? I don't know. I bet it's not good, though. I'll say that. I bet it's not good. I don't know what religious people would do or anything, but I think there would be some serious impact on their belief systems, which would make a lot of people very uncomfortable. And what they would do, I don't know. Secondarily, the general public, I'm just going to give you 4 words. Looting, riots, murder, rape. I think that's what we would expect with disclosure. Now, this may be me projecting or indicating how highly I think of the general good in society, but I think the outcome would, regardless, be horrendous. It would be a terrible hellscape to live in a public that disclosure had occurred. So let me explain why. A large number of people would automatically assume the worst. And that would be, oh, aliens are here to kill us. We need to hunker down. We need to protect ourselves. We need to survive as long as possible. That means going to the grocery store along with thousands of other people with the exact same idea, fighting over a single bottle of water and a single can of beans. What does that lead to? It's going to lead to fights. It's going to lead to rioting. It's going to lead to looting. It's going to lead to shootings. It's going to lead to killing. And a lot of evil people will say, oh, look at this. There's no law. I can do whatever I want. And a lot of bad things will happen. So that's my take on general population and general public. Sorry, I don't have much faith in you. And then there's a loss of governmental control. So if people discovered that the government had known about extraterrestrials and kept it secret for years, people would lose faith in the government and everything that had been told to them, and they'd start to question everything that had been told to them, thinking, oh, well, they lied to me about this. Why? I bet they lied about that and that and that and that. I bet they lied about 9/11. I bet they lied about the Kennedy assassination. All the conspiracy theorists it would be their field day. They would love it. I'm not going to say I would love it, but would be interesting. Now, I just don't think a lot of people would follow the laws anymore because they wouldn't have faith in the governmental institutions and they wouldn't have faith in the people who were in power because they had directly lied to them. So that's my take on what would happen. Now, what's the purpose of the Space Force? It's going to be a boring answer. It's not going to be a sexy answer like E.T. is coming for us. It's not going to be a sexy answer like the Anunnaki are back. Nibiru is real. Nothing like that. My thought would be to ask a question. What has allowed society and culture to grow the most and improve the most over the last 100 years? I'd probably say communication, GPS, stuff along those lines. And what is essential for a lot of that technology? Satellites. So if you are in space with weaponry and the ability to infiltrate other countries' satellites and take them down, you could cripple an entire country, their economy, their military, and it would be, it would be a rough one. So for instance, if you were to cut off communications, I bet their economy would tank because the economy is very reliant on internet communication, e-commerce, all sorts of stuff like that, especially stock trading. That is essential communication. They could just sever the fiber optic cable and then they're reliant solely on satellites and then take them down. You got them. They're done. You got them. That would be an amazing thing to do. Well, I shouldn't say amazing. That would be a very smart military attack on a country without firing a single shot. Because once you take out their communications, their economy tanks. Once you take out their GPS, they're no longer going to be able to launch guided missiles. Their economy is crippled. Their military is crippled. They got no money. I think that is likely going to be the big motivating factor behind a space force. We're so reliant on these satellites up there that people need to protect them, and they need to think about them as potential attack targets. I don't think it's extraterrestrials. I don't think it's anything along those lines. I guess what it comes down to is I just think the Space Force would be set there for surveillance, as well as you'd get a lot of military benefits for being the first nation to militarize space. So I think that's what it really comes down to. And thank you so much for asking that question, Anthony. I had so much fun thinking about it, answering it, and hopefully people don't hate me too much for rating on their parades, but thank you for asking that. And the last email comes from Tim. He says, "Hi, Bandrew. Really enjoyed the video/rant about mic polar patterns. I work at a large national broadcasting facility and have seen this infomercial multiple times. Apparently, they are only using the Yetis as props because they all have lapel mics on as well. Just thought you might enjoy this mic fail. I enjoy the podcast on YouTube each week." So, Tim, thank you very much for watching the podcast or listening to the podcast every week, and thank you for sharing this tremendous mic fail. This is exactly why I thought it necessary to put out that video, because a lot of people just don't know any better, so they will speak into the top of the Blue Yeti, but also there are dopes like this infomercial producer who use microphones as props. Some kid might see them speaking into their Yeti like that and think, oh, that's the right way to do it because they're doing it on television, and start speaking into their microphone improperly. So I think that is really important to correct, and that's why I appreciate you sending me this and pointing out the mic fail. And you know what? This may be a fun segment to do recurringly. If you guys come across any mic fails, take a screenshot or send me a link to a video with the timestamp, and let's go ahead and include some mic fails in here. Maybe shame some people. I don't mean that seriously. Don't shame people, but it could be fun. So go ahead and send those to askbandrew@gmail.com. And that is going to wrap up today. Went pretty long today considering a slow news week. I'm telling you, I'm starting to like the sound of my voice, even though it hurts really bad. It hurts really bad. That means I'm not speaking properly. So I'm wrapping it up. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you want more podcasts, geeksrising.com. I will see you all next week. Thank you again for supporting the podcast on the Podcastage channel. Talk to you later. Bye.
This has been a Geeks Rising production, your executive producer of Bandrew Scott. For more information, head over to www.geeksrising.com.